And welcome to another episode of the Dynasty Trades HQ podcast. My name is Michael Cipes. You can find me on Twitter at FFBlitz, and I'm here with my partners, Jeremy Browand.
Hey, what's up? Back again at Dynasty Madman on the Twitter box.
And Shane Manila.
What's up, party people?
Hey, we've got a big show today because we've got Scott Barrett coming on to talk about rookies. And I mean, we have a couple little things about news, and I guess we could do that really quick, but Scott's waiting on us. So why don't we talk about these couple news things that we have here that brought to you by fantasydata.com. Use our promo code TradesHQ and get your discount there. Let's do this real quick. What was the news? The big news story was Drew Brees coming back, right?
Drew, old man. One more year, yeah.
Coming back.
Yeah, one more year, eh? So can milk those fantasy points for one more year. I don't think you're going to be able to trade him though. Everybody knows it's one more year. Trade him this year.
I mean,
right?
But that's kind of been the case for the last 4
years, right?
Where it's like, all right, well, I guess I'll just have him die on my roster. Which whatever, that's fine.
I think the bigger impact would be the other two guys, the Taysom Hill and the Teddy Bridgewater. There was talk for a little bit, maybe about a month ago, that, Taysom Hill was going to do it or be the guy there. And now everything I've heard and read the last 2 days is, where's Teddy going to go?
Yeah, where's he going to go? Right. Yeah.
I don't care because, frankly, he's a game manager. I don't own him anywhere because I really don't expect much out of him, to be quite honest with you. He's a game manager. That's what he was in Minnesota. That's what he was last year for, what do you call those people? The Saints. Whatever. Go wherever you want. I mean, he's going to go to Miami for a year. There's no situation that would have been better for him than stepping in where he's at already.
Yeah, well, he knew that the first time he had a chance to pick teams, right? Like it made sense for him to go there. He didn't know Drew Brees would get hurt, but an aging quarterback, a great offense, that was a smart decision for him to be a Saint. Now I'm with you. Teddy, bridge quarterback water. He's definitely more like a bridge quarterback, go somewhere for a year, like you just said, Shane. I've always been a fan of his, but yeah, he's not going to be, more than, your Derek Carr kind of guy, and probably really well suited to be a backup quarterback, honestly, in the NFL. But, like a bridge quarterback, and take those starting opportunities when they come, because he's a competitor and he'll probably want that. But, what's that going to do for your fantasy team? Maybe a couple games here and there. I wouldn't seek him out. I tend to keep him where I have him, though, because people don't offer much. You got him off the waiver wire or whatever. May as well just hang on to him and hope for the best and maybe get a week out of him or something next year to break up your super flex bye weeks or something. I don't know.
We rushed through this. We rushed through this because we have Scott waiting, but I think I got to take it back. When I said the first news was Brees, the bigger news, at least for all of us watching football, is the expanded playoffs that they're saying they're going to be voting on that may even go into effect this year.
So they want a 17-game season and 14 teams in the playoffs, one team with a bye. What's that? So that would be 6 wild card games?
Yeah, they said there'd be 3 games on Saturday and 3 games on Sunday.
So where this does worry me, though. So say you're almost locked into a wild card spot, but have no shot at the number 1 overall seed to get that bye. What's to stop you from resting players in week 16 even? Or which would be now week 17?
Right.
There'd be 18 weeks.
I know it's confusing.
Yeah, so the one good thing is if there's 17 games, I'm assuming that means there's 18 weeks of football, so fantasy can go a little longer. The bad thing is, are they going to throw another bye in there? Or are they players going to rest during week 17 and 18? I don't know.
Yeah, it could be a negative at the end of the year like that. I haven't looked at this at all, guys, to evaluated it in any way. I know we'll talk about it more going forward, but it is exciting just to have expanded opportunities for fantasy football. Definitely the only thing I thought of as a positive so far. And the NFL, of course, is going to make more money, and that's what they want. So works out for everybody, I guess.
I think fantasy wise, especially as a commissioner and everything, I don't think I'd want to expand the the regular season fantasy from like 13 to 14 games and then push the whole playoffs. Because you're probably right, Shane. We already have enough problems right now if your playoffs go all the way to week 17. And then if you're going to have an extra week in there, I think I would just keep it the same way it is. Just let the NFL change, not fantasy.
And the bye weeks too. That's that was the thing I thought about when I first heard about this. Bye weeks, like, is that going to mess up? How are they going to structure that differently, or are they, because we all struggle with that a little bit during the fantasy season. I'm just curious to know how. I want to know now how's that going to shift up the bye weeks? How's that going to affect my teams?
Bye weeks are already so screwed up as it is. It's and for whatever reason, there's always that one week that has more teams on a bye than any other week, and well, all right. So, like we said, we have Scott here. We have so much to talk to Scott about, the DFB, with rookies, all that kind of stuff. So while Jeremy gets Scott to come in the room, Shane, why don't you tell everybody about our Patreon account?
So, yeah, we have a Patreon account. And actually today, I for the first time in a couple of weeks, I went back in and started updating some of the running back data. And I just got through 2016. I added receptions for that season, total carries, total years, and average receptions entering the season. And that took a long time, but I was stuck home today with a sick kid, and so I had the time. But anyway, so, that's what you get when you're a patron. You get some written content, but what you really get is the uncensored version of this show. You get the group me chat, which is probably the best group me chat that's ever existed.
Yeah, I will say those guys never stop chattering, man, and talking. They never stop chattering and talking about trades in there. It's amazing.
And I did the math. Per capita, we have more podcast hosts in that group me chat than there are cows in Iowa.
I think you're right about that.
It definitely seems that way. It seems like it's an incubator for making podcast hosts.
Like you said, the point remains that there are probably more podcast hosts in there, judging by all the solicitations than in any other thread known to man.
Yeah, but so just become a patron. It's worth it. You could do it for as little as $1 a month if you want to just jump in the group me chat. But if you want to get the podcasts, the bonus podcast every week and the uncensored episodes of this podcast, you need to become a patron. Step on up and step on in.
Yeah,
guaranteed to have fun, man. Right? I mean, it's a fun group and always active. That's the coolest two things about it.
I really like this idea too with you, Shane, doing the written content and the stuff that you're working on. Not only do you put that out there, but you were also showing everybody what you were working on, so they saw your whole work process with your computer and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of cool.
You got to focus that sexy energy on a few things and do them well instead of everything pretty well. Now you can do the few things really well, which you're capable
the show.
of.
I'll just focus on awesome. The show. Yeah, no, it was nice. I got to break out the second screen today.
Yeah,
I was over the my estranged spouse's house, and I was able to break out the second screen out on the dining room table with. It was beautiful. Just compiling data while my sick son was laying on the sofa
with Ryan Matthews in all his glory. I saw
that. That's amazing. Yeah, good for you, man. I like that running back stuff you're putting together. I think that's great, sharing that with the patrons, and I look forward to reading it more thoroughly myself and talking to you some about that. All
right, so Jeremy, did we get Scott in the room?
Yeah, see for yourself.
Oh yeah, there he is.
so just because we're all familiar with Scott, apparently way too familiar, because we're just like, oh yeah, Scott's here. Not really befitting his status in the dynasty and fantasy football world. Let's give him a better introduction than that.
Well, just introduce him like we did the first time. Tell everybody who he is and where he's from. That's on the sheet, and then we'll talk to him like we're old friends. Just let everybody know who he is.
But you guys are so funny. I wasn't introducing him like that. We were picking it up like we said to Jeremy to go get Scott to bring him in the room.
There are other Scott Barretts out there in the world.
Yeah, but all I did was ask who was here. I didn't do the introduction yet. But yes, now we do have Scott Barrett in the room, the senior fantasy football analyst from Pro Football Focus. Hey, how you doing, Scott?
Hey guys, yeah, no, I'm the man who needs no introduction, or at least for you guys. I thought I was the Alec Baldwin of SNL of your podcast, where just a reoccurring frequent guest pops in every now and then.
That's perfect. I remember we mentioned that last time you were around, and that's pretty good.
It is pretty much true. If you ever want to come on the show, we'll always make space for you. So
well, I love that standing invitation, and now's a great time to do it. I got a bunch of awesome Dynasty content coming out on the rookies. I feel really good about where I stand. I built this fancy new model that literally took, 4 weeks of my life to build, and it's just like so impressive. Uses the best PFF stats, so strong, so awesome. So excited to talk that with you guys. Talk maybe a little DFB league after we both disappointed in year one. Yeah,
that's actually what we were going to start off with tonight, because we actually haven't spoke about DFB in a little bit. So we thought
a long time.
Yeah, we thought having you here tonight, we would start off with how did it end up with you? How did it end up with us? How did the league finish off?
Well, we had high expectations. Like we said, we were the best team short term and the best team long term, and obviously, short term, that was a little overzealous, especially considering, we were up against all these teams who sold out in year one, like Graham, like Evan, like Barry, who were the top 3 teams all year. Meanwhile, look at us. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 picks in the top 16, 7 in the top 23, 9 in the top 30. So, again, we're stacked long term, but short term, a lot of disappointment. Le'Veon Bell was a massive disappointment. David Montgomery, I just did a big thread on why I'm worried about him. Damian Williams, some wide receiver injuries, Juju, a lot of things that could go wrong did go wrong in year one for sure.
And Jeremy, how did we end up doing?
Not great. We were definitely not one of the best teams in the league. One of the worst. We did not finish in last place, though. We made some trades and improved the roster, got some picks. I think we made up for lost time. And hey, Scott, do you still want Hakeem Butler? I meant to ask you. It's been a while. We're going to send him to you.
Don't put that evil on me. I don't think I ever wanted Hakeem Butler.
Okay.
Well, if you'd like to give up any of those first round picks, we do need we do have Michael Thomas, who's on the block, and right now he is like a lipstick on a pig. I think that's the saying. Lipstick on a pig. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, we're ready to trade our best player.
Do we have any first round picks? Round picks?
Negative.
Ah. So maybe we can end up doing a trade with you, Scott, live on the show.
Oh, yeah. Put him on the spot.
Hey, what me and TJ have been trying to get Michael Thomas from you guys for a while. I think before the season started, we were like, you guys should be tanking, and we want Thomas.
Before the season started, you told us we should be tanking.
I think so, but the joke's on us because like we said, we finished fourth worst, and we sold our first to someone else. So, we bet we'd be a lot better than we were. Of course, we have the 101, the 110, 11, 13, 16, 22, 23. So we're well positioned, and we're well positioned to purchase Michael Thomas.
Possibly.
See,
yeah, you were right. We should have tanked.
I want to let you know, this is why I like Scott. He doesn't just talk shit, and this is true to his fantasy, like his fantasy analysis. He practices what he preaches. We're talking about a trade here, and I go to log on to send him an offer, and you know who's on the DFB page right now?
He is?
Yes.
See, Scott, usually when we're doing a show, Shane is doing trade offers and sending stuff out while we're talking. If somebody
he's not necessarily doing the show unless we bring up something he doesn't want to talk about. And he's like, let's just do the show. But then during the show, he's not doing the show. He's trading with you in the background.
Why are our quarterbacks so bad? That's, I guess, Jesus Christ.
Dude, the whole team's bad. Scott was right. We should have just tanked. I mean, he did not misspeak.
Well, if you guys are looking for quarterbacks, we have Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz, Kyler Murray, and maybe soon enough, Joe Burrow with the 101, or Tua, but probably Joe.
And the fact that you said Carson Wentz, Shane kind of sat up a little bit more, because isn't this the league where Sorry. Isn't this a league? Shane just made a face. Was this the league where Shane wanted Carson Wentz, Jeremy, and we didn't? Yeah.
And we didn't let him. And I think he was mad about that the rest of the draft. And it was just like the three of us in a tug of war. And it really benefited our roster, as you can tell, to play like that. I mean, play tug of war for like multiple rounds of the draft.
I think you guys took Jared Goff over Wentz.
We did.
We did.
Oh.
But not in the same.
Thomas over a lot of other bodies, and I know that wasn't the unanimous decision. I think I finally convinced Mike that we needed to take Michael Thomas. That did work out okay. We definitely have trade leverage with him, as he finished top of the charts last year at wide receiver. No surprise, but now we have an asset for Shane to try to get a first round pick with.
For sure. I just wanted to mention two guys who went before Michael Thomas, or three. One was Todd Gurley. One was Juju Smith-Schuster, who we took.
Oh
the other was Odell Beckham Jr., and those guys have fallen precipitously.
Well, look, look, hindsight is 20/20, right? Going into last year, I know I wasn't the only one that had Juju ranked as his top dynasty wide receiver. Oh. A year without Ben Roethlisberger and having below replacement level quarterback play and being injured will definitely do a number on your value in dynasty.
Yeah, and you know what's funny, Scott? You're making appearances on other shows talking about rookies and everything, and when you make the comment that you're
jealous.
Yeah, but I'm gonna say no. What I'm saying, no, I'm not jealous at all. What I'm saying is,
I am.
No, I'm not. What I was gonna say to him is the fact that he made that joke about being the Alec Baldwin to our show. You go on to these other shows and talk all this seriousness about rookies and stuff, but you're here on our show, and now we've spent like 10 minutes talking about let's do a trade. Yeah, let's do it. So it's a totally different experience for you being a guest on here than it is on some of the other shows.
So absolutely. And I was just messing around. Like before the show started, I was like, yeah, I wanted to give you guys the exclusive. You should have had me on earlier. But I do like that. It's the cold analysis of here's the players and versus, here's my strategy. Here's what I'm actually doing. The players I've actually acquired. I do need to, say that I am with a partner in this league. So not all of the decisions are mine. Like I would like to throw TJ under the bus a little bit on the Juju pick. Maybe that was his. A few other. We got George Kittle. We got Hunter Henry, who's going to be a New England Patriot soon. Maybe, hopefully, we'll see. But
that'd be cool.
I thought there was chatter today about Jimmy Graham to New England. I'm not really sure why. I mean, it's the off season, so everybody just spews anything that they can think of out onto the Twitterverse.
Yeah, there was so much in all that Diggs talk today and everything like that.
Whoa. That's true. Diggs is coming to the Eagles. Just calm down.
You hope so.
So then, Scott, are you also saying that if Shane ended up putting together a good trade with you, you wouldn't be able to do it without talking to TJ?
I mean, TJ is the go-to trade guy. I hate trades. I just hate, haggling. I hate, having to check and make sure I'm not getting ripped off for a player I really love. So that's TJ's whole department. So you probably can't sign off on it without TJ's approval.
Hey, we have the same issue. The three of us, trying to make trades. It's gone well, pretty well so far. We had Deshaun Watson. That was a pretty good quarterback asset we took early in the draft, and we traded him for Cam Newton and Miles Sanders, I believe, right, Shane?
Yeah, it didn't work out.
It didn't work out.
Can't walk.
Didn't work out yet. Yeah, last season it didn't work out, but it did help us tank if we had done that. But Newton coming back and Sanders panned out pretty well, your Eagles. So, I mean, it wasn't a loss. But, yeah, we're definitely in the market to trade. So check the roster out and hit your buddy up, and let's see if we can make something happen. But Shane, don't be trading Michael Thomas without talking to us.
No, I've already talked to you about it. I said I'm trading him.
We have to approve this trade, brother.
Only one first and a second for Michael Thomas? Okay.
What?
Shane's drunk.
Yeah, Shane will send him for Carson Wentz straight up, and then we'll be totally screwed.
All right, so let's talk to Scott about some of these rookies. Now, Scott, you haven't seen our show sheet because we said
I sent him that stuff.
Oh, damn it. So I did have a question. I heard you talking a little bit about running backs on the Dynasty Blueprint today.
Well, wait, before we get into that
Okay.
question, Shane, before we get into the question, can we ask him to talk about his predictive measures, his predictive analysis, and what he's put together a little bit more, and then go into your question? Because it'll be, it'll almost tie right into it.
Sure.
Well, same question, but I wanted you to talk about the predictive measures that you took, you spent the month on to get ready and put this great stuff out for, for all the readers.
Yeah, so just generally speaking, my process has always been along these lines anyway, where it's, first I just go through all the raw data, then the combine hits, and, I make tweaks based on that. And then I spend a ton of time watching tape, talking to, tape experts, spend a lot of time talking to, Mike Renner at PFF, Danny Kelly at The Ringer, people along those lines, which goes into, my rankings. And then the draft hits. And the most important thing everyone knows is draft capital. Also landing spots big. I spend days watching every post-draft press conference where GMs and coaches tend to be far more honest. They're just like so excited they got their guy. They're talking willy-nilly. Oh yeah, well, we only like him as like a run blocking tight end. We don't think he's that good as a receiver, but blah, blah, blah. So big bunch of hours of research goes into these rankings that get tweaked every single time. And so that's what I'm doing here. Just the first pass of my, model is just the raw, the objective, looking at the most important variables for each position. Like, yards per route run is insanely important for tight end and wide receiver. Matters, a little bit less for running backs, where running backs total missed tackles is so important. Doesn't really matter much at all for tight ends. Look at, Zach Ertz has forced 2 missed tackles over the past 4 years, basically, but he's still, this phenomenal, productive tight end. I'm doing this with a multiple regression formula. I back tested it. It's really strong. I should mention, like for the combine, I'm only looking at the most important events, and like for wide receiver, like honestly, combine's super overrated. And even as a whole, like just looking at the best, most predictive events really is only going to have like a small impact on my second version of my model. But this first version of model, long story short, it's done. It's glorious. I feel really good about what I have. You're like, some guys are a little different than my rankings, but for the most part, I'm staying true to the model.
Man, I like the practical sound of it. Like when people are sometimes scared off by metrics and some of the things that are put together for people who, in general play dynasty football, and it might be intimidating, but I like the practical sort of pragmatic nature of how you put that together. I think that's what I think is the most interesting part. And, the predictive nature is just a really good angle.
Yeah, I should say these articles are out on PFF. The wide receiver one's coming soon. Paywalled. Maybe not the tight end one, but like these articles are awesome. Like I just feel like, if not to toot my own horn, but I feel like if I could just like, if I just tweeted out like my favorite stat from each player, like each one would get like 50 retweets and 200 favorites. I'm not doing that. Just read the article. It's awesome. Just trust me on this.
Yeah, we kind of were loose with the opening, like Shane made the joke about, but we didn't tell everybody where they can find all your work.
Yeah, so Scott, follow me on Twitter at Scott Barrett, DFB. My articles are on pff.com in the fantasy section.
So Shane, you had a question you wanted to ask him.
Well, now I just want to know when all these articles are going to be done, because I read the tight end one, I believe. Is that what I read? Did I read the tight end one? Is that what's already out, Scott?
So that one's out. The running back's out. I will say about the tight end class, you're going to hear all these NFL draft analysts come out and trash this tight end class, saying it's terrible, which is like true to a degree. Like there's no complete TJ Hawkinson, style of tight end, but Hunter and Harrison Bryant, Hunter and Harrison are not gonna be touted very highly by the NFL guys because they're like sort of tweeners. They're more in the wide receiver mold, but that's great for fantasy, where like Evan Ingram was that basically, and I think that's what we're going to see. I think these guys are really good, exciting prospects who, like, if you look at ADP right now, I think they're both like 3rd round rookies. I only play tight end premium, by the way, so they're going to be way higher in mine anyway. But I do like those prospects both quite a bit, and I don't get inside sources almost ever, but I got one on Harrison Bryant. Said this guy really could be a top 50 pick. Teams are going to fall in love with him. He's a great receiver. And then Hunter Bryant, I like even a little bit more than that.
It's really cool that you brought both of those guys up. I just happen to have both of them seriously on my college fantasy football team. Getting tight ends, not drafting most of them highly, getting them later on. So it just happened like that. And it was great to see that you're so high on those guys. You do own them in some Devy spots. Interesting to see what other people bring out, but I definitely took stock in that those ratings. But I did read your running back article, and that's, I think, what Shane's about to ask you. There's one key running back that I want to talk about here in a minute.
I can't find the running backs one. I don't think I read it because I can't find it. I definitely read one. Huh? Maybe I'm just not that bright. I mean, that's.
Why don't you ask your question, and
anyway,
I think we'll get into it.
Oh, where are we at? Oh, okay. So I guess it's maybe the 3rd tier of running backs: Keyshawn Vaughn, Zach Moss, Benjamin, Scotty Phillips. Can any of these guys be top 24 backs, do you think? Or more importantly, will they be top 24 backs?
I love Zach Moss. According to my model, he's the RB2. According to my rankings, he's the RB3, and I feel great about that. It's close with we'll see how much like legitimate buzz there is around DeAndre Swift going in the 1st round. So he's maybe RB3 or 4 in my rankings, but RB2 in my model. And Mike Renner, the lead draft analyst at PFF, actually has an RB1.
Wow.
And basically the key with him is he's just amazing at forcing missed tackles, and that's easily one of our most predictive, most valuable metrics at PFF. Really, you just take a list of the best, total missed tackles for seasons in the NFL, and all those guys have had a ton of fantasy success, were drafted really high. Kareem Hunt was the first guy in that mold, but you also have, the Dalvin Cooks of the world, the Christian McCaffreys, the Alvin Kamaras. And specifically what my model liked most about Zach Moss is what I think is really interesting is the model said that in terms of projecting bell cow potential, receiving fantasy points, I didn't think raw receptions were that important at all. So you have someone like Clyde Edwards-Helaire who caught 55 balls. What was more important was the efficiency on those catches. And so Moss totaled more missed tackles forced as a receiver than Edwards-Helaire on half as many receptions. He scored just as many standard fantasy points on half as many receptions. And the same thing was true for Jonathan Taylor. And those guys ranked 1st and 2nd in yards per route run last year. Edwards-Helaire, in spite of the 55 catches, ranked much lower. So, I like his bell cow potential. I love him as a runner. Missed tackles forced. It's just such a money stat for college prospects. The one guy, it might have missed on was David Montgomery. I just had a big Twitter thread about that a few days ago. But the red flags I noted with Montgomery aren't there for Zach Moss.
So what are some of those red flags if, say, someone didn't have a chance to search your tweets?
Right. So with Montgomery, with all running backs, basically, if you force missed tackles, chances are you're really good at gaining yards. And that's a better measure than yards per carry, because yards per carry is what is the offensive line giving you in so many instances, whereas missed tackles forced is what is this running back doing independent of his blocking. So typically, you're good at forcing missed tackles, you're good at gaining yards. Montgomery might be just one of those rare instances of a player who's good at forcing missed tackles, not very good at forcing or gaining yards. And I think that's because, he lacks that initial burst, as everyone said after the combine. He lacks that high-end speed, which we saw in his low breakaway percentage numbers throughout his career. And he was just slow out of the gates. Like he drew contact behind the line of scrimmage so often. And then if you look at runs where that wasn't the case, he still only averaged like 4.5 or 5.0 yards per carry, which was like among the worst in the class by far. Whereas you look at someone like Zach Moss, who's elite at gaining yards when contact is initiated behind the line of scrimmage, and when that's not the case. So when he's had a bigger hole, and in spite of like a really bad offensive line that graded really poorly in run blocking, contact wasn't as initiated as often as it was with Montgomery. So looking at it a bunch of different ways, I would say, he's going to get comped to Montgomery. He's going to get comped to Kareem Hunt because he's in that archetype. But I like him more than Montgomery and probably a little bit less than Kareem Hunt.
Yeah, so I guess that's what it is, because when you watch David Montgomery, even to the untrained eye, you're like, something's not right here. You know what I mean? For lack of a better phrase, it's just like there's nothing there. Like he might be able to break a tackle, but it's also because everyone and their grandmom can catch him. But yeah,
I mean, I was disappointed with him for sure. At the same time, I mean, he's still a rookie. We've seen so many rookies disappoint year one. Joe Mixon, LaDainian Tomlinson, Le'Veon Bell, Christian McCaffrey, all had worse yards per carry averages their rookie season. He got the touches. He was every beat writer talked him up all summer. The spent a lot of draft capital to acquire him, especially when factoring in the trade. The teams were selling out to stop the run because Mitchell Trubisky stinks. He's not dead, but I have a lot of concerns.
It was a rough offense, and the Bears were not good, so that didn't help. It's not like they put a generic average back, and maybe he is at more average than we thought, but they didn't just take this crummy back and put him on a great team, and he failed, or a great back on a great team. They failed. The Bears were not a good team, so it's tough. You have so many variables to consider, and the reason we talk about it too is trading for him, because you can get him a little cheaper. Now, of course. You can move him, but we talked about his value before. Where did you have Singletary last year? I just thought of that. You had him ranked pretty highly, right, in your model from last year?
So according to my model, he was definitely higher than whatever consensus had him. But the model didn't exist last year. I had him RB4 post draft. Maybe a little bit higher, because he was another guy who crushed missed tackles and didn't have any of the red flags that I just listed with David Montgomery. In fact, the opposite was the case, where he excelled in all those areas where Montgomery struggled.
Not that you'd have the time, Scott, but if you took last year's running backs and ran them through this model, that would be kind of interesting. I'd like to see how some other running backs look through your model that you just developed. Historically, now. Heavy picks, whatever. I don't know what you want to say, but I'd like to see other running backs in whole through your model.
Yeah. So Jonathan Taylor, ranked historically elite, basically third best within our sample. Only Melvin Gordon and Dalvin Cook ranked higher, and directly beneath him was Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley. And, I'm in full agreement with that. I think he's, really that kind of level of a prospect. People overthought it with Christian McCaffrey. People overthought it with Saquon Barkley. I don't think we should overthink it. I think it's Jonathan Taylor as the RB1, and I think he's the 101.
And you're not even a little bit concerned, because frankly I'm not, but I'll just ask you if you're concerned at all about the workload Jonathan Taylor saw at college at Wisconsin.
Yeah, I don't get that. When you're talking about DeMarco Murray hitting his contract year, yeah, that's a concern, or like a 27-year-old back or 28-year-old back. Yeah, but you're talking about a young 3-year college starter who averaged 300 plus touches per season, never missed a game. No, when I see that, I put that in my notebook as a good thing. Guy who can handle a workhorse workload. I definitely don't see that as a negative. So yeah, I like that.
That track speed. He was a track star. Ran track there. At Wisconsin, he's super fast. He's not slow in any way. He was durable. all the yards that he racked up, everything. I mean, there's not, you almost have to like be nitpicky to find something not to like about Jonathan Taylor. You do. I mean, almost have to be biased to not like the guy.
I was talking about like, each stat for each player. I could tweet that out, get 50 retweets or whatever. Here's my chart for Jonathan Taylor is, so like since 1956, every college football player ever in the Power 5 is sorted by yards from scrimmage per season. Jonathan Taylor, 2,193. No one else hit even 1,900.
Wow.
And if you look in the top 10, it's, two busts. LaMichael James, who is an injury guy. Ron Dane, who still went, top 3 overall, but a historic bust. But then beyond that, it was Herschel Walker, it was Ricky Williams, Dalvin Cook, Ray Rice, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley.
Wow.
And if you include not Power 5 running backs, you get guys like Marshall Faulk. So like really just like an elite cohort of names, and he's at the top of the list. Just like, and any stat you want to look at, especially the stats that my model cares about, he crushed. Leads this entire class in career yards per carry, leads in career yards per route run. I like his upside as a receiver. Yards after contact, the best seasons we've ever recorded. Just everything you'd want, he has, and he crushes. And like I said, I'm not supposed to look at too much film. Like when I do, like I consider that cheating until this model's done. These articles,
right? Cheating.
but I watched a little bit of tape on pretty much everyone, but he was the one I just like could not stop watching, which I think is a great sign with a running back. Like Kareem Hunt was like that when he was getting zero buzz out of Toledo. And it's just like, he's a guy you can't even like, mind-blowing film where like I couldn't even appreciate it until I watched it in slow motion, where he's just like running and he like runs into like a sort of pile, and then you blink and then he's out the other end going for 18 yards, and you're like, what
so
happened?
Fast. Yeah.
You watch it in slow motion and he's just like doing these like Neo Matrix moves, dodging guys in the pile, stiff arming them, and just, somehow like making guys miss in a phone booth and somehow coming out the other end. And he's so fast, so athletic, just like a phenomenal. Let's not overthink this. I think he's easy 101.
Can I ask about one guy that you have ranked higher than probably anywhere else I've seen? Benjamin. No. Just I'm not knocking the model at all. It's just that the consensus on Benjamin is not great right now.
Yeah. So I would have guessed that if you asked me the one guy you think your model's wrong on. And I mean, Benjamin's okay. He was another missed tackles forced guy. He had bell cow usage. Averaged 750 plus snaps, 275 plus carries, about 40 receptions per season his last 2 years. Came within 100 yards of 2,000 scrimmage yards in 2018. So the numbers are there in spite of poor offensive line play. But yeah, I mean, I don't like him as much as my model for one reason. He, in spite of the bell cow usage, he was below average in yards per route run. And beyond that, he's supposed to have a poor combine. He's underweight right now. My model has him 5. I definitely won't have him 5 in my own rankings, but again, he did well at a lot of the things I care about, and I'll probably have him maybe 8 in my rankings.
It's funny when you talked before about likes and views and everything, a lot of people just really go right for the lists. People post a list and it gets so many views. If you had to say right now, before the combine, before the draft, everything, what would be your like top 5 running backs before we go on to the wide receivers? Obviously you sound like it would be Jonathan Taylor would be number 1, but what are your top 5?
Yeah. So right now it's Jonathan Taylor 1. It is J.K. Dobbins 2. It is Zach Moss 3. It is DeAndre Swift 4. And again, my model, like the hit rate is great. It's crazy good, but it would have missed on Josh Jacobs last year. And the reason why it would have missed was because, he was a committee back who didn't force a lot of missed tackles. But part of that was They both had elite offensive lines. And then if you look at the career numbers, where Swift ranks only behind Taylor in yards per carry, yards per route run. My model has him 6, but again, like Jacobs, when it was announced early on, Jacobs earned an invite to day 1 of the draft. I just catapulted him up my rankings. I would do the same for Swift because at the end of the day, the most predictive variable, most predictive metric is draft capital.
Yeah,
he's 4. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is 5. And that's Cam Akers is probably 6.
Yeah.
When you say that about
a good list.
Yeah, but when you say that about draft capital, what happens if Jonathan Taylor goes to a situation that you don't believe is so ideal? Is that going to knock him down, or is he so good that it's not going to matter?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. It would really have to depend. Like if let's say, Eno Benjamin goes to, Kansas City in the first round, I could conceivably have him over Jonathan Taylor, who would go to, like the Giants or like somewhere where there's an established sense, or a coach who has never had a bell cow running back, only uses guys as a runner with like a pass catcher, scat back involved, splitting snaps or something. I don't know, but again, that's a factor that comes in later to the process.
And it's funny because your response to that just goes to prove that you're right. The draft capital is like the biggest predictive for you for the player.
Yeah, for sure.
So what about wide receivers? Jeremy, Shane, did you guys have questions about any of the wide receivers?
I want him to tell me that T. Higgins is going to be great. So if he wants to tell me that, that'd be awesome.
He's going to be okay.
Scott, do you want to tell him that?
Yeah, so I agree. I think T. Higgins is going to be great. My model has him as, a sort of elite wide receiver prospect. It probably doesn't have him as high as he'd like in this class, but I feel he's going to rank a touch higher in my own rankings, and I feel great about him.
Scott, let me ask you this: there is one prospect that's particularly divisive right now in Jalen Reagor. What do you have on Mr. Reagor?
Oh, I have an amazing stat on him. I haven't finished that blurb yet, but I'm going to have a filthy stat on him, which is just like basically I took all wide receivers over the past 2 seasons. You look at their yards, find wide receivers with a similar ADOT to Jalen Reagor, and look at the percentage of their targets which were deemed accurate by PFF charting. And, I don't have it in front of me, but it was like 20% of his throws were accurate, whereas someone like T. Higgins, something like, 65% of his targets were accurate.
That's bad. That's not good.
It's insane. So so if you look at then, yards by accurate target, he was amazing. My model liked him. It didn't love him. And I feel like my rankings are going to be similar. I think he's going to crush the combine, but I also think NFL teams dramatically overweight the combine. One wide receiver I'd love to talk about is Tyler Johnson. Because my model absolutely adores him.
Good.
And, doing the research on him, I don't get it. So he wasn't invited to the Senior Bowl, which basically means that NFL teams think there are 15 better wide receivers than him.
Yeah.
If you look at all the expert mock drafters, the expert draft guys, like the big name guys like Matt Miller, Daniel Jeremiah, whatever,
sure.
Early January, here are the first round wide receivers. It's Jerry Jeudy, it's CeeDee Lamb, Laviska, Tyler Johnson, T. Higgins, Henry Ruggs, and then 2 months later, someone asked him about Tyler Johnson. They're like, oh, he's a day 6, day 7 guy. Basically, there's just so much evidence that NFL teams hate them. Or there's someone like leaking to these guys that he stinks to maybe suppress his draft value. I don't think that's the case. I think legitimately NFL teams don't like him. I do not know why. What are the most predictive, most important variables to consider? Again, it's landing spots. So maybe I should have him a lot lower because there's all this evidence saying landing spots. I mean, not landing, draft capital. Draft capital is going to be poor, right?
Right.
Yeah. But at the same time, the most important variables are things like breakout age, dominating at a young age, dominator rating, yardage market share, carrying your team, PFF grade, yards per route run. Guess what? He had the dominator rating. He made up, basically 50% of his team's passing yards over the last 3 seasons, including his 19-year-old sophomore season. Over the last 2 years, he finishes 3 yards shy of CeeDee Lamb in receiving yards, ranked first in PFF grade, first in yards per route run. Just obscene numbers, and people hate him. I don't know what it is. He's supposed to. Yeah.
What's not to like is the thing. That's what I want to know. What's not to like? Because, and he did that, and sometimes in dominant fashion against some pretty tough, over a few years, pretty tough Big Ten defenses. I mean, it's not like the guy's a slouch playing at a small school, racking up stats. It's hard to figure out why they're so low on him. I don't get it.
Yeah, the NFL hates him. I mean, it didn't help when, he's initially invited to the Shrine Bowl and nobody wants to be there. That's not your goal. You want it to be at least invited to the Senior Bowl. But then to drop out of the Shrine Bowl, I think if there was any hope of him ever getting into the Senior Bowl after that by bowling out, well, obviously he blew that. So he is interesting because I know a bunch of Devy guys love him and Scott's model loves him. And apparently all the analytical models love him. But the NFL apparently hates him. Unless it's just a smoke screen and he's going to go day one.
Everybody really loves him and they're fighting over drafting him.
They're all pretending. They're all pretending they don't want him.
I don't think that's the case because they hated him last year too, where he based on his numbers, you would have expected him to come out. He basically told him, we don't have a high draft grade on you. You should stay in school. And what should you work on? Yeah. He was quoted as saying, basically, they told me I need to work on everything: route running, not dropping passes, getting faster, but being more physical at the catch point. And so they legitimately hate him. He's also supposed to stink at the combine. Even the coaches came out and said his playing, I don't know what he's going to run at the combine, but his playing speed's pretty good. And basically supposed to stink at the combine. But again, I don't think that matters. What I did think was interesting was he was, by my data, he was elite at the slant route and one or two other routes. And what was interesting was those were the same routes, Michael Thomas dominated, Devontae Adams dominated, DeAndre Hopkins dominated, a few guys who basically
DJ Moore.
A few guys who the NFL was a little too low on, guys who weren't hyper athletic or hyper fast. And I think so. I don't know. I just know I'm a coward if I don't rank him top 7, top 10. So that's what I'm gonna
sticking to your guns. Yeah. The one guy that I want to find out what Scott Barrett thinks about is Henry Ruggs, and I was waiting to ask you this for a while. Your model, you personally, tell me about Henry Ruggs because I'm not the biggest fan of that player.
Yeah, so that's a tricky one for me. My model didn't like him, but of course my model wouldn't. For the same reason, my tight end model, really, really good. 2 players that missed on was Noah Fant, TJ Hawkinson, who would have had as second round tight ends or day 2 tight ends. And the reason why was because, how often do you see 2 round 1 tight end prospects playing on the same team in the same draft class?
Never.
So, and it makes them look bad in comparison. It's the same thing with Alabama where it's okay, you have 5 top 50 receivers on this team if you include, Irv Smith and the guys coming out next year. So his numbers aren't, model's not going to like him based on his numbers, but to be fair, he's playing with some elite guys. I still think I'm going to be way lower than consensus, partially because all of the data I've looked at says more so than any other position, the combine is massively, massively overrated for wide receivers. If you adjust draft capital is king, right? So we know having a good combine is going to help your draft capital, right? And even then, the correlations to fantasy points were like barely anything. The two most important things were bench press and weight, and everything else was at like zero correlations. And then if you adjust, like, why would that make sense? Why would that bench press? You're not like bench pressing a corner off of you and press.
Am I playing running back? Am I an offensive lineman? I don't know.
It makes no sense. So like, and then if you adjust for draft capital, you get these negative correlations where basically what it's telling you is like legitimately in the second round, if you have a wide receiver going, pick number 50 and pick number 55, and all you know is the one who went pick number 55 was slower than the guy drafted right ahead of him, you should draft the slower guy for fantasy. Like that just shows you how much NFL teams are overweighting these athletic measurables for wide receivers. It's basically saying like this is a really difficult position where being good at that, you're made up of intangibles and tangibles. Tangibles like measured things at the combine, like speed and whatever. And these intangibles are more important. And you've seen it. There's a lot of guys in the NFL who have had a lot of success who were deemed too slow or had a poor combine or what have you.
And meanwhile, John Ross is kind of an afterthought. Maybe he'll do okay, the new Cincinnati offense, and he'll become something. But that speed that he showed off, that he practiced for, and he broke that record, really doesn't mean a whole lot anymore.
When is your article for the wide receivers going to come out?
Well, I'm still working on it. So, probably, hopefully Monday, maybe Friday if I really get
Well,
cool.
So all right. So obviously it's still a few days away. But what is your top 5 for the wide receivers then?
Do you want the model or my rankings?
Your rankings.
Okay. All right. CeeDee Lamb number 1 for sure. Feel really good about that.
I was going to ask you that. I'm glad you said it right off the bat. I didn't have to worry about sneaking that in there anywhere.
Exactly. Go ahead.
Jerry Jeudy number 2 for sure. Feel really good about that. And then it gets really tricky. There's this big giant tier, and I think it's Higgins 3.
Nice.
In contrast to my model, or maybe LaVisca. I'm just gonna put LaVisca and Higgins 3 and 4 tied, and then number 5. Do I want to cower to expected draft capital in Ruggs, or do I want to put I think maybe Brian Edwards.
I would. I have Edwards over Ruggs, but I'm not as smart as you are with this stuff. And that's one of the things I've always valued your analysis, and I like that it's even improved over the years with this predictive nature. But the fact that you don't just look at primarily you're looking at data that tells the story, but then you solidify it at the end with more tangible things that also matter, that have a greater predictive power than some of the things you might have had leading up to the initial rankings. But that's something that, these guys know I've talked about for a couple years. And it's just that, I do a spreadsheet and I just put some stuff on there, and I'm a guy playing dynasty football. And at the end of all of it, I come up with a confidence rating for who to draft when, especially when, when you're you got a cluster of guys 4 through 8 or something, whatever, and you're trying to break ties, watch a little bit of them playing football if you don't have enough on them, and where did they get drafted, of course, at that point, if you're at that point in your rookie drafts, and just some more tangible, and I don't want to say common sense, but it's just, things that you can grab hold of and really use, that you can take and as almost primary research, I guess, and plug in too, and then see how that shakes up your confidence in those players. And your model with the way you have it set up, and that it's cool at the end that you also do a little, I guess, refactoring or a polish at the end, just to kind of scrub it and say, common sense tells me this player is drafted in the first round, I might want to bump him up my list. Or conversely, this player wasn't drafted very highly and maybe I need to bump him down. It makes a lot of good sense, and I know you have a lot of readers, and I think you're helping them out with that stuff.
Yeah, so I appreciate that, and you're right. So at the end of like this wide receiver article, I'm going to have to put, notes. Henry Ruggs, KJ Hamler didn't rank in the top 7, but they deserve a mention because they're going to get drafted highly. They're going to have great combines. They're whatever.
You mentioned at the beginning about that you only play in tight end premium leagues. The biggest thing we've talked about on the show for a while, Shane specifically, Superflex seems to have taken over everything. Everybody's Superflex right now. And with the Superflex, these quarterbacks end up going higher in some of these rookie drafts, especially in the bigger leagues. Like we have a 16-team league and everything. So where do you have the quarterbacks in this rookie class? Like, how do you have them ranked? And when is a quarterback article coming out for you?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I kind of just want to throw my hands up in the air at quarterback. Like, any model anyone's going to do with quarterbacks is going to suck. It's just like, volume stats don't matter. Like even the efficiency stats you think matter. Like it's just like so hard to nail the quarterback position. And NFL teams, have had so much trouble, solving that position. Even with all the PFF data I have, I don't think I'm really equipped to do it. I don't think a model is going to be worthwhile. So I'm just kind of punting that position. Where do I have the quarterbacks? I have it, 1, Joe Burrow, because he's awesome. Really tight second, Tua, because he's awesome. And then the rest of the guys, I'm really just going to, appeal to authority there and go with whoever the experts tell me. And, after a little bit of tape and looking at, PFF's information. But that I feel really good about the work I've done with the other 3 positions. I think quarterback's just a little too tricky.
That's cool. And you speak about the other 2 positions, or 3 positions. I'm sorry. What about the tight ends? What is your top 5 with the tight ends?
So number 1 is Hunter Bryant. Number 2 is Harrison Bryant. Number 3 is Adam Troutman. Number 4, Bryson Hopkins. And then number 5, basically my model said those are the only guys likely to be a really high draft pick, potential, late day 2 guy. But I guess Thaddeus Moss, just because, the buzz he's getting. Yeah. But really those 4 guys are the big ones for me.
The big names, yeah.
Yeah, so I was going to ask, do you think anyone's even worth drafting in non-tight end premiums within the first 2 rounds right now of rookie drafts? Tight end wise.
I in non-tight end premium, I treat, the tight end position like I would the kicker position. So I wouldn't waste my time.
All right, so before we wrap everything up, Shane, Jeremy, do you guys have any last minute questions for Scott?
No, man, I'm still, kind of processing everything I took in from Scott tonight. I got to get a voice to text hooked up to our podcast.
I was gonna say, I noticed on the show sheet, I wasn't sure which one of you 2 guys were writing it, but people were writing down his list while he was talking. I see a tier thing. That was you? Okay, great. Jeremy?
Yeah, no, Scott, you've been great. Answered a lot of our questions. We'll dig into some more of this as time goes on, maybe after the combine, as we get closer to the draft. You're welcome back anytime you want to talk about whatever. Thanks again, and we'll see you out there.
Let's do a post-draft update at the very least.
Well, Scott, sure. I was going to ask you, are you going to be at the draft at all this year?
Probably not, but
okay.
You never know.
All right, well, cool. Well, I was going to say I'll be out there, and there's a bunch of people that are getting together to do some podcasting. So if you were going to be out there, I would like to meet up. But if not, we'll get your thoughts afterwards. And so before we go, why don't you tell everybody anything you want to plug, anything you want to tell that we haven't already talked about?
No, definitely check out these articles. And if I'm not at the NFL draft, which I don't expect to be, I'll probably do the drunken live stream that I've done for the past years. So
awesome.
Make sure you check that out, where I think 3 years ago we had someone drunkenly fall asleep mid show. So
really awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna try to put something together while I'm out there on camera too, because these 2 guys won't be there either. So maybe you'll drunkenly stumble into our room as Alec Baldwin,
I'd love it.
Well, thanks again for coming on. We really appreciate it, and like Jeremy said, you're welcome anytime you want.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
That was great to have Scott on the show. You know, it is funny. I love when he always makes that reference about being the Alec Baldwin to our show. It'd be cool if he did just pop in one time just out of nowhere. So we're going to do the Patreon show. So before we go, do you guys want to tell everybody about, well, we already did the Patreon stuff. Go check out our iTunes account at DynastyTradesHQ. Oh, wait.
Yeah, give us ratings and reviews.
Yes, ratings and reviews. And then I just looked at Jeremy and I realized HQ3.
Yeah, HQ3. What? We already have all the we have all the entrants. We're ready to go. We're ready to roll it out. Everybody.
So yeah, you were talking before the show, and you mentioned that we got so many people.
We did
want to be in it, and all of them are awesome. So we're gonna have to do an HQ4 as well. So we'll be doing an HQ3 and an HQ4.
Boom! Surprise! Surprise!
That's the surprise.
But I think we're done, right? Because
yes.
Do we have enough people now?
Oh, we have more than enough people to do.
We have enough to go even further, but I think we're going to have to cap it at 3 and 4, and maybe open up a 5th next year.
So that was the surprise we were going to say, and it kind of rolled out of our mouths actually. But
because we decided they're going to be auction leagues, right, guys?
Right.
Auction drafts.
They are auction drafts, and what we're going to do is we're going to notify everybody. We wouldn't want to sit here and do a show where we're sitting here saying every name. So we're going to notify everybody this week, send out invites, and so it is a little bit different than what we had said we were going to do, but it's actually better because now we have multiple new leagues. So go check out our iTunes account at DynastyTradesHQ. Give us a rate and review. Send us any trade offers that you want us to talk about on our Twitter at DynastyTradesHQ. And we're going to go do a Patreon show. So everybody say goodnight, and thanks for listening. Say goodnight. Say goodnight, Shane.
Good night.
For listening.
Good night, Shane.
Everyone. Good night, Shane.
Goodbye.